Would you agree with that?
No, I don't think so. I think we have a great health system. I think
Do you now? It costs three times as much as the rest of the world. China is stunning at the other extreme. And you cannot believe
they're
you're in a...
capitalism, though. I would put China as capitalist, which they embrace capitalism, right? They embrace an element of capitalism.
An element of capitalism.
Yeah, of course.
There's a tendency to be like a cardboard cutout attitude.
Today we're reacting to a fascinating exchange between Patrick Bet-David and Professor Steve Keen on whether China's rise is really a success story or simply capitalism wearing a different label. But before we begin, if you enjoy this kind of content, please subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Okay, let's get to it.
Now, China has studied both Marx and the Russian and the Chinese and the Russian experience and Kornai's work as well, and they realized they had to find some way of guaranteeing innovation would occur at the level of consumer products, and they've done that. They have centrally planned laying out the infrastructure. So the roads, the rail systems you see are all state-owned and state-managed, but in things like car manufacturing, I think it's about 120 Chinese car companies at the moment. That won't last, but it means you've got 120 different companies competing for the share of the same market. They're innovating like crazy, and therefore this Chinese system has got the best of both worlds in the sense they've got central planning for infrastructure and long-term development, and they're doing that quite brilliantly. And at the same time, they've got enormous innovation taking place in the private sector, which is all driven by profitability and capitalist motivations and so on. So in terms of the country which succeeded from a Marxian foundation, it's definitely China.
Professor Keen nails it here. The West loves to frame China's economy as either state-controlled or capitalist. Pick one, they demand, like it's a multiple-choice test. China studied the Western failures, studied its own history, and built something the textbooks still don't have a name for. Look at what that actually produced. Rail, ports, the grid, built and run as public goods. And underneath that, brutal, chaotic, competitive markets for everything else. Cars, phones, batteries, you name it. 120 car companies, not 5 giants, 120 companies, clawing over each other, innovating because their survival depends on it. The West has a name for this, but always comes with a hyphen and a warning label. State capitalism, like it's a disease. But strip the label off and look at what Keen's actually describing. Infrastructure as a public good, and innovation left to private competition. And a key detail is America privatized its railways and got decay. China kept it public and built the largest high-speed rail network on the planet. China let innovation flow and is now eating everyone's lunch globally on price and on tech. So China looked at how other countries were implementing their system, took the lesson, avoided their mistakes, and kept building.
And so how should we judge success between capitalism and communism?
Well, if you're going to use the America versus China result, China's rate of economic growth and China's lifting of people out of poverty transcends anything America's achieved over its time. So American industry has lost complexity, lost sophistication. China's increased its complexity, increased its sophistication, and since the Deng Xiaoping reforms, which are absolutely critical, occurred, you've had something like over 500 million people raised from out of absolute poverty. So
which they embrace capitalism, right? They embrace an element of capitalism.
An element of capitalism.
Yeah, of course.
There's a tendency to be like a cardboard cutout attitude, capitalism versus communism, as if there's a standard version of both. Now, of course, there's dramatic variations in capitalist nations and in communist nations.
Capitalism versus communism. Which one works? But Keen cuts through the sensational labels immediately. He goes straight for the number the Western press desperately avoids. How many people got lifted out of poverty? Not GDP theater or stock market headlines that enrich the top 1%. More people than the entire population of the United States moved from absolute poverty into modern life in a few decades. Nothing Western economic history touches that. Whether we like it or not, here in the West, we industrialized through colonial plunder, slavery, and indigenous land. China industrialized through its own labor, its own planning, its own sacrifice. And unfortunately, Professor Keene is right. American industry has lost sophistication, while China's has gained it. China isn't making more t-shirts. It's making everything that matters today. EV batteries, 5G infrastructure, quantum computing, rare earths, public infrastructure at a scale never seen before. The main issue here is America didn't just lose complexity. It sold it for quarterly earnings. Professor Keene rightly critiques Patrick's cardboard cutout. Capitalism versus communism as two fixed, static blocks is a Western framing device, not reality. And as usual, you would find headline after headline predicting China's collapse. Or their favorite phrase when China's accomplishment cannot be denied, but at what cost?
I would put China as capitalist because their government is communism, but they have a free market element that allows you to compete. It's not by force. You can have an opinion. You have an ability to build a business, and they watch others succeed, and they decided to copy what was working, which is America. So did Russia in a sense. Wouldn't you agree on those two concepts?
No, I wouldn't.
So you would say that Russia and China are still 100% communist nations?
No, I'm not saying 100%. This is why I think you're trying to put things that black and white pictures when everything is shades of grey.
Why don't we do this? Can you define what communism means to you? What is the definition of communism to you?
Well, we don't have communism anywhere on the planet.
Patrick's question reveals exactly how his mind is trained to see the world. Everything must fit a binary, and if it doesn't, you force it until it does. China is capitalist because free market element, ability to build a business. They copied America. There is no analysis. The underlying assumption is grotesque. If China succeeds, it must be because it became like America. He cannot conceive anyone's success outside of Americans' shadow. Patrick literally says China decided to copy what was working, which is America, as if America's model is the default setting for human progress. But Professor Keene shuts it down beautifully. No, I wouldn't. Because the premise is false. China did not copy America. They studied nations' failures, China's state-owned banking system, its 5-year plans, its infrastructure-first development model. These are not American features. Designed precisely because the American model produces billionaires, record profits, while ordinary people can't afford basic necessities. And when Keene says we don't have communism anywhere on the planet, the entire framing collapses. They need these labels because labels are weapons. Communist justifies sanctions. Authoritarian justifies regime change. State capitalist dismisses Chinese success as somehow borrowed, somehow inauthentic, somehow not real. But what if the truth is simpler? What if China built something new, something that works, something that doesn't need Western approval?
If you had to get a pure statement of the ideologies of both systems, capitalism basically says, everybody out for themselves, get the best possible gain you can for yourself, and out of the self-interest and self-obsession, you'll get the best possible outcome.
That's your definition of capitalism? That it's only self-interest?
It's not the one that I heard.
It's mathematically impossible if it's only self-interest for you to succeed.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
It's impossible.
And that's an important point. Both systems are impossible in their extremes. And there's a tendency in Western thinking to go left versus right, one extreme versus another extreme.
Professor Keene mentions a clear problem. Everybody out for themselves. Self-interest as the core. And Patrick's response? That's not the definition I heard. Of course not, because the West never sells capitalism with all of his faults. It sells freedom, opportunity, entrepreneurship, anything but the raw mechanics. The math is simple. If everyone pursues pure self-interest, the system implodes. Remember 2008? The fact that Wall Street needed the state to survive proves it. And of course, both systems, in their pure forms, are impossible extremes. But Patrick presents his arguments as normal, grounded in the middle, and then proceeds to describe the counter-argument using an extreme framing that doesn't work.
The socialist economies tend to be 50-50 or more provided by the state. Capitalist less than 50-50. But as time has gone on, there's more and more things that are needed for a sophisticated society that are what you can call public goods. So, for example, health. My health affects your health. If I come down with a communicative disease, you're going to catch it. So there's ways in which that's a public good rather than just a private good. Now, there's an enormous range of things that are like that now. Education, we all benefit from an educated workforce. We suffer from a dumb one.
As societies get more sophisticated, the public goods expand. Health, education, infrastructure, these aren't luxuries. They're the preconditions for a functioning modern economy. My health affects your health. My ignorance costs you productivity. This is why China's state-owned rail network moves 4 billion passengers a year, while America's privatized rail network is in decline. This is why China's literacy rate hit 97%, while the US has 21% of adults who can't read. Professor Keene puts it very clear. Public goods are what make private goods possible. You don't get Silicon Valley without the Pentagon-funded internet, without public universities, without the NIH funding basic research. The tech billionaires pretend they built it alone. Professor Keene knows this better than most people, and just explained why one system invests in public goods.
Really, it's a division between the extent to which goods are provided by the state system as just part of the fact that you're a citizen versus having to pay for them. And the socialist economies will have more of that.
I've never seen any customer service on how they treat people be better that's ran by the state than ran on a free market side.
If you become a bureaucrat in China, you have a set of guidelines that you're required to reach, and if you don't reach them, you either get sacked or you don't get promoted, and you get ossified. And that seems to be a large part of why the public services in China seem extremely well provided, and certainly better than what you get in America.
Patrick's interjection is revealing. Fear-based, fear-based. As if accountability is somehow illegitimate when it doesn't come from a quarterly earnings report. Performance metrics are fear when applied to public servants, but incentive alignment when applied to CEOs. Keene's point is devastatingly simple. Chinese public servants have targets. Miss them, get sacked, or stagnate. And the result? Public services that function. The customer service frame itself is a trap. China's system doesn't ask if you're satisfied with your bureaucrat. It asks if the high-speed rail got built on time, if the village got electricity, if the poverty target was met. Those aren't customer service metrics, but governance metrics.
The best example of free market failing America is your health system. Would you agree with that?
No, I don't think so. I think we have a great health system. I think...
Do you now? It costs three times as much as the rest of the world.
Do you think
you pay about 3 times as much per head for health as most Western nations do?
Our capita per GDP is also higher. If Australia was a state with us, you would be number 40. If UK was a state, it would be behind Mississippi at 51. So it's also capitalism's brought more people out of poverty in US than any other country in the world. I'm surprised you're fighting this.
Keene asks about the American health system, the most expensive on earth, costing $4.9 trillion annually, producing worse outcomes than countries spending much, much less. Patrick's answer? I think we have a great health system. Based on what? Patrick, would you care to elaborate? Why do you think when the CEO of major private health insurance company was unalived, there was so much conflicting opinions? No one deserves to die. However, the reaction of the people reflects a deeper sentiment towards how the healthcare system is completely broken, and only if you or someone close to you has been affected by it can understand. And Patrick's response reflects why people feel this way. Our GDP is higher. As if wealth accumulation and health delivery are the same thing. Yes, Patrick, USA makes more money than anyone, but also is ranked 6th in unequal distribution of this wealth that is being generated. People at the top 1%, I'm confident, have no grievances of the system that propped them up. So yes, Patrick, we got it. USA is super rich. But China spends 5% of GDP on healthcare and covers 1.4 billion people. America spends 18%, with worse results than developing countries. So tell us which system serves its people and not who is richer.
I'm sorry, but I'm finding this a very black and white conversation when I prefer to work in shades of grey, as I was
Feel
saying
free to make it
beforehand.
colorful. I mean, go ahead if you want to make it colorful.
Colour is, I meant to mention about the medical. Now, you say the medical system in the States is fine. You have a lower life expectancy than virtually every other major Western nation. I don't know the actual numbers, but I think the life expectancy in America is of the order of about 74 or 78, I think it is, and the most of the rest of the world it's 84. And you pay about 3 times as much per capita for the health system. And the reason the health works very badly as a private good is because when you find you're dying of a fatal disease, you don't have any bargaining power. If you find you've got a disease you need the best doctor for, you'll pay the best doctor's price no matter what.
I think a lot of people would say on that side, how do you like Robert Kennedy? How do you feel about RFK?
Professor Keene hits his breaking point here, and you can hear it. He's trying to do economics, actual analysis, actual data, and Patrick keeps dragging him back into the cartoon. Make it colorful. But Professor Keene comes back with elements that actually matter. American life expectancy, 79 years. Most developed Western nations, beyond 80. China, roughly 79 and climbing. And here's the main issue. America pays roughly $14,570 per person. By comparison, the average cost of healthcare per person in other wealthy countries is half as much. China, less than $800. Professor Keene says 3 times as much. He's being generous, but he also lands another strong point. Health doesn't work as a private good, because when you're dying, you have no bargaining power. We love to talk about consumer choice in healthcare, but choice requires information, time, and alternatives. But this system treats illness as a revenue opportunity, when it should be a public good. However, PBD's response is, how do you like RFK? RFK, really? A lawyer holding the Secretary of Health and Human Services position? What do you think a lawyer expertise is in human health? This is what the Western debate has become. You bring data about life expectancy and healthcare issues, and he counters with a celebrity endorsement, a personality. But Professor Keene is treating this conversation seriously, and I don't know if PBD is taking the conversation seriously, but his arguments are not attached to the reality of most people, or his points are very superficial. But anyhow, this is all from me. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Please subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Did China succeed because of capitalism, as PBD said, or because it refused to copy the Western version of capitalism and embrace the best elements of other systems? See you in the next one.